Good morning, everyone. I hope all of you are doing well. COVID times are slowly coming to an end, so hopefully, we will all be able to meet in person soon. I am here today to speak about maritime law as a career option in India. My name is Priya. I have been a maritime lawyer for about 23 years now, and I hope I can give you a bit of perspective on what maritime law career will be when each of you decide to join this as a career option, each of you decide to look at it as a career option. I hope I can throw some light on it. Many of you here today are already associated with the maritime world in some aspect of the other. Some of you are possibly familiar with maritime law as a subject. And having been here for a fair bit of time, and if I'm allowed to be a little boastful, I can tell you that maritime law is one such career option which binds together all different aspects of the maritime world. The maritime lawyer becomes a part of each journey that each of you enjoy in this maritime world. So let's just look at this as an option, as a good career option when you are starting off your career, or if you're looking at a midterm career change, etc. Before we get into the nuances of maritime law as a career option, I think we should first consider the more basic question as to why law? Why law as a career option in today's day and age? Uh, let's look around ourselves. I'm just going to give a very basic example. Wherever we are surrounded by technology. I am sitting in my office in Bombay, talking to you, sitting somewhere in India or somewhere in the world. We are connected by technology. As you see, technology today is an integral part of our life. And at this stage, one would think when technology is far more visible, when technology is the in thing today, why am I looking at an alternate career option of law, which is, as we all know, one of the oldest professions that we have known, mankind has known? Why look at law? But it is an interesting career option. It's an interesting field that I am in, and that's why I'd like to share this journey with you. So, we are surrounded by technology. All of us have a phone in hand, we have a laptop, we have a desktop that we are all sitting with and looking at today. All of you are aware that all of these items are not always made in the same location or state. It's sometimes not made in the same factory. It's made across by different suppliers in different states, in different countries. All of these are manufactured in compliance with legal requirements of that state. All of these are then transported to an assembly location. Let's assume today the reality is most of these are assembled in China. So let's assume for a moment and we go with China, all of these different components that go into your laptop, into your phone, into your headset, anything, is then assembled in this location, and then the final assembled piece is dispatched from that location to various states, which includes India or anywhere in the world. And you and I go and buy it from our local vendor. Imagine the number of hands that this particular small piece of technology or equipment passes. So, wherever there is a legal compliance that's involved in the product, there is always an opportunity for a lawyer, and you can make your career here. Maritime law is predominantly an ocean of law and regulatory compliances. And therefore, a lawyer plays a vital link in connecting the various factors that go into a maritime transaction. I am here today to give you, in a nutshell, what is the role that you can play when you choose this potential new career, and what kind of job opportunities you think can come your way. It's a vast industry. I don't know if I can touch every aspect of the industry or every aspect of the profession today, but I can give you in a nutshell that you have there is a space for everybody, and you have a lot of opportunities in this industry. Every maritime adventure, as I call it, when any product is sent from a remote location in one country to a remote location in another country across the globe, there is a cross border transaction. This cross border transaction involves multiple transport agencies, it involves multiple parties to the transaction, it involves multiple agencies. You need somebody who is able to understand the nuances of the laws across all regions, and you need somebody to tell you whether what is a perfectly equitable legal right in one country would not be so in another country. One would assume, when one thinks of it from a common sense perspective, that would this not be the same in another country? It's not often the case. Every country comes with its own set of laws, with its own set of equity background, and therefore it is the lawyer who understands the transaction, who understands what is required in the venture, examines the laws across different countries, and tells you what is possible, what's not possible, what are the things that you need to factor in when you're doing this. So that's what maritime law is in a nutshell. But before we get into the nuances of a maritime law as a legal profession, one should understand why law. Because in India, and I speak from an India perspective today, and I will give you the details later, there are few courses which offer you maritime law as an integral subject in your legal profession. More often than not, it is a subject that you study in your master's, which is after your bachelor's degree. So therefore, it's important to understand, why should I select law as an option? Aren't there enough lawyers in the world already? How can I benefit from it? Will the profession accept me? Will I find my footing in the profession? And the answer is yes, there is a space for everybody, and it is for you to find your foothold. And this is a field which, across the globe, you do not have too many players. This is a field which is a very niche industry, simply because of the complexity of how the industry is and how the legal industry in this world is. So, why law? Law and lawyers as we know it is one of the oldest and the noblest professions, along with those of doctors, etc., that has been known to mankind. So such an old subject, why should I study it today? That's the beauty of law. Law is something that evolves with time. Law is not constant. Law is something that is constantly moving in this world and to suit the current problems that are faced today. So let's see how law evolved in India to get an idea of how we can see the various stages that it has undergone, etc. The earliest known legal manual that is known in India is what is called as the Manusmriti. Manusmriti is something that is stretching across various volumes. It's obviously written in Sanskrit. It's an excellent book for somebody who's thinking of venturing into law, because it gives an idea as to how law evolved, how society evolved in India in those Vedic eras, as one could call it. So law in India has evolved from that kind of a religious prescription to what we see today in independent India as a constitution and legal system that has been set up. It's a secular legal system following what is called as common law. Prior to independent India, law widely varied from region to region and also from ruler to ruler. Court systems has been an integral part of our systems through many of the ruling dynasties in ancient India. We've all heard of the Chandragupta Maurya regime, where courtcraft was essentially one of the key aspects of that regime. It's a part of law. But coming more to recent times, the history of the legal profession and courtcraft as we see it in India today can actually be traced back to the establishment of the first British court in Bombay in early 1600s. And believe it or not, it was sometime in the 1700s, 1770 if I'm not mistaken, where the British colonial government used Manusmriti as one of the Sanskrit texts to construct what is today popularly codified as Hindu law. But Manusmriti is more than that. Manusmriti actually laid down the foundation of how society ought to behave. It formed the basis of what is today known as equitable law in India, and that's where our courts today follow. We are courts of equity. So, what is common law? We spoke about common law earlier. Common law system is based on recorded judicial precedents. This came to India along with the British East India Company. The company, when it set up in India, it established what was then known as mayor's courts in Madras, Bombay, and Calcutta. These mayor's courts eventually came down to be called as presidency courts, and we will see the significance of presidency courts in the admiralty jurisdiction a little later down when we come to it. What the British did was that, or what the British East India Company did, was by setting up these mayor's courts in these three jurisdictions, they slowly expanded from all of these jurisdictions across India, replacing the then existing Mughal legal systems in those parts. And did the profession suffer? Did the process of equity suffer? And the answer is no. That's the beauty of the profession. The beauty is its ability to adapt itself on equity, good conscience, customary practices, and law does not remain dormant or stagnant. It changes with the course of time, adapting to prevailing advancements. Even today, every new piece of legislation undergoes what is an equity test. Is this going to be fair? Is it impartial? Is this going to apply across societies without any problems? To ascertain whether the statute is good in law or not. The legal profession has continued to evolve every day. There are some laws which are obsolete. There are some which are consolidated today with other subjects. Some need refinement in view of how society has evolved from the 1800s or 1900s. But having said that, there are still certain good laws which continue to hold true even today, some of which were enacted in the pre-independent era. For example, our Indian Penal Code is an act which is prior to independence. It's 1896. There are other provisions which are similar in time, and they are today relevant even in today's circumstance. So law as a noble profession will always have a place. It is always a valid career option. How does one become a lawyer? I will get to that a little later, but it is a viable option for any of you who want to do this today. So once you've become a lawyer, why do you select maritime law? Some of you are already familiar with the maritime industry, some of you are not. For those who are not, maritime transportation is the backbone of international trade and global economy today. Almost 80% of the global trade by volume and about 70% of the global trade by value are carried out by sea and are handled by different ports worldwide. To me, the subject is an umbrella. It encompasses so many aspects of the trade, and in doing so, it deals with each aspect of the maritime industry. If I can give you an example, it starts with the basic thing, that's the building of ships, a huge industry in itself. The shipbuilding industry is a very large sector. Once a ship is built, you have to register them. You can register them in your country. You can register them in what are called flags of convenience. You can register them across the globe, subject to local laws. Once the ships are registered, some regimes require that the ships must be licensed to be operated in different parts of the world. So you have licensing. There are just so many types of shipping and shipping trade that's involved over here. And today we have come such a long way from, say, what was the first wooden built ship to a remote operated vessel that's operating across the globe. That's the dynamism that's involved in the industry. You do have mobile offshore drilling units, which was not so prevalent in the 1800s or 1700s when all of this was being thought about. You have so many vessels which are associated with the offshore support industry, whose job is pretty much only to support the mobile offshore drilling units which are working in the offshore fields. So there is just so much. This is just the shipping aspect of it. In addition to this, the maritime trade, like I told you earlier, also involves transportation of cargo from one place to another. Wherever there is a transportation of cargo involved, or wherever there is transportation involved, there has to be a human element. That human element is your crew. So there is crew working on the ship all the time. It's a 24/7 job. Crew are a regulated industry. The labor law associated with crew working on vessels is a completely vast subject in itself. We have the Maritime Labor Organization, which comes up with upgraded uh, information every year on how working conditions for the crew can be improved from time to time. So that's a major factor. Another major factor, of course, is multimodal transportation. Imagine somebody sitting in Ludhiana wants to send something to a remote corner in, say, Australia or Germany or Alaska. The person sitting in Ludhiana has to first transport the cargo by road most of the time to the nearest port. From that port, that cargo will then be transported by one or more ships, depending upon the routing, etc., to the intended destination port, and thereafter it will then move from another mode of transport to its final destination. Each leg of transport is a potential risk involved in the transportation. Each risk, therefore, gives an opportunity for a lawyer to come in should there be any problem involved. So you have somebody who's sitting in Ludhiana who could very well be called in for a dispute which arises in relation to a transportation to the nearest port of call. There could be problems in the transportation by ship or by sea, and which could give rise to a potential dispute. Similarly, there could be a potential dispute at the discharge port until end destination, which gives rise to another legal dispute in that country, giving rise to the need for a lawyer in that country as well. So maritime risk is something that is associated with every transportation. And where there is this risk, there is a potential career growth option. So, this we're talking about what kind of risks are involved. But today, maritime arbitration is recognized as a viable alternative to a court litigation in very many parts of the world. Maritime arbitration centers are set up as an institutional alternate dispute resolution mechanism because the trade demands quick resolution. We cannot have a 5-year litigation on an issue which is a constantly cropping up issue in different parts at different times. So, quick resolution alternatives is a need of the hour, and therefore, maritime arbitration as a potential subject or a potential avenue for career is again a great career option. What else is involved in a maritime risk? Insurance. Given the sheer nature of the perils that are involved in transportation, insurance plays a huge role and an integral part of every maritime adventure, and therefore an integral part of maritime law. Any good transporter would know what is an optimum insurance that he needs to opt for that particular transaction. It is not one solution meets all. There are different solutions that are available, there are different packages that are available, and therefore one needs to understand the nuance of marine law to understand that this particular transaction you should go for XYZ option and not ABC option. So again, great opportunity there. Similarly, there is chartering of ships. So wherever there are transportation of cargo, there is requirement for ship. Sometimes people want only a slot on a ship, sometimes people want the whole ship. So it all depends upon what is the need of the client, and then they go to chartering brokers who then negotiate and finalize your fixtures for you. Again, that's a maritime lawyer's job. The chartering agent could do the fixation of the finalization of the fixture for you. But ultimately, interpretation of the various charter parties, interpretation of various terms to understand the nuances, to tell you which would be the most ideal one for your case, that's that's a great option again in chartering. Something that is not discussed very often, but again, a very integral part of the maritime world is the need to be constantly thinking ahead in the future to see what would be the requirement of the day. And that's where the International Maritime Organization comes in, which has been largely instrumental in understanding the needs of the industry and coming up and updating the conventions, as we call them, from time to time to see what is the need of the hour, what is required, so that you have uniform practices across the world. They have provided a regulatory framework, a broad framework, which is then passed on to the member states. And it's for the member states to then implement it in their country as per their local requirements. But the integral part of what is the nuance of law that needs to be covered is then provided to you. Take, for example, ship design, construction. What are the equipments? What is the, how does one dispose of bilge water? How does one, what could be the bunker precautions? What are the pollution precautions that one needs to implement at the stage of designing of the vessel or the construction of the vessel, so that the sector remains safe and environmentally sound, energy efficient, and secure? Very important aspect. This is a regulatory aspect and something that again gives you a great option. So this is basically what maritime law in a nutshell is. There are, like I told you, it's an umbrella and which encompasses various items under it. So why maritime law in India? India, as we all know, has a huge coastline. Our coastline spans across 8 of our states. The need of the hour is to develop our coastal waters for better coastal movement of cargo, for more efficient movement of cargo. All of this will better our economic development, and also it's one of the key revenue generation areas. So why shipping today? World over, people are crying, saying that the recession, global crisis which happened in 2008 was a big setback. We have seen very many shipping industries also uh, either shut shop or look at other options, etc. So why today? But the need of the hour today is there. The shipping companies are equally affected by the COVID crisis. There are several cross border insolvency issues that has cropped up in the last 5 to 6 years, as I see it. At times like this, there is a need for domain expertise to resolve the disputes. And there is a need for lawyers who understand this concept, who are then able to step in and find a viable solution for the various disputes that come across. Not all disputes can be resolved in courts. Courts, unfortunately or fortunately, sometimes take time. Uh, it involves large legal budgets, and it's not always a viable option to go to court. A lawyer's job is not just to go to court. A lawyer's job is also to find the best solution for their client. And sometimes that solution can be as pragmatic as looking at the papers, looking at the situation, and determining what is in the best interest of the client. And if that means not going to court, but sitting across the table and finding a workable, mediable solution, that would be an option. And that would come only when you have the domain expertise and not just an expertise in equity. Because, like I said earlier, it involves cross border trade. You need to understand the nuances of what the law is in that country. You need to know what the law is in your country, and therefore see what would be the most viable option in such circumstances. The government also recognizes that this is an industry which possibly needs a little bit more attention than what it's got thus far. There are so many ports, and today we are lucky enough to see the development of far more ports, the development of infrastructure connecting these ports to roadways, so that the movement of cargo is being eased, with making it a more efficient industry. The Ministry of Shipping and Ports have also introduced the coastal shipping bill to give a much needed impetus and a boost to coastal shipping. The Merchant Shipping Act is being rewritten, and it has been introduced in the parliament to bring within its fold the various new conventions that has been introduced by the IMO to make it a more efficient, user friendly statute from a user perspective, from an industry perspective. Similarly, there is an Inland Vessels Act which is being relooked at. There is the Ports Act which is being looked at. In each of these, the stakeholders and interested parties are given the option of offering their comments and suggestions, so that the real pinpricks in the industry, the real rough edges that needs to be eased out, can also be factored in when these bills are eventually passed in the parliament. So this is broadly what we see as the maritime law in India is. So, what kind of litigation does one do as a maritime lawyer? A core function or a core part of the practice is admiralty law, what is typically known as admiralty jurisdiction in the different courts in India. Prior to 2017, India did not have a specific admiralty law coded in independent India. We relied upon certain colonial legislations which were enacted in the 1860s whenever we had to approach courts to seek arrest of various vessels, both foreign and Indian, for various claims that may have arisen against the vessels. But the 1860s legislations were not diverse enough to factor in the more recent problems that a litigant would face in the current year. So, what IMO had done was IMO had come up with the Brussels Convention, in which it had explained what is a maritime claim. It had explained the procedure for how a maritime claim can be enforced, what kind of an action could be filed, etc. And it was up to the member states to have adopted this into their municipal legislation. While India did not adopt, while India had actually, I'm going to correct that, India adopted the Brussels Convention. Having adopted the Brussels Convention, we did not incorporate it into our municipal law. We did not codify this law in our country. But what lawyers then did, what we did, is we would rely upon the convention, point out to the court that these were ratified by law, and therefore this could be enforced by the courts. This convention was later followed by another convention, which changed the position slightly, not dramatically, but these were the conventions that we as lawyers relied upon when we had to go to court to make our claim. Prior to 2017, the only courts which were vested with admiralty jurisdiction were the presidency courts which had been established by the British, by the East India Company prior to independence. You would recall I said in the beginning that they had established the presidency court, mayors courts, which then were called presidency courts, which were the courts of Bombay, Madras, and Calcutta. Following independence, the state of Gujarat was carved out from the existing state of Bombay. The state of Andhra Pradesh was carved out or included a part of the erstwhile state of Madras. And basis the jurisprudence available, the high courts of Gujarat and Andhra Pradesh would also be vested with the admiralty jurisdiction and began hearing admiralty matters. However, with the advent of the 2017 Act, the admiralty jurisdiction has been vested with the High Court of every coastal state. That is today, and I'm going from west to east, the High Courts of Gujarat at Ahmedabad, the High Court of Bombay at Bombay, the High Court of Bombay at Goa, which is a separate state, the High Court of Kerala at Kochi, the High Court of Karnataka at Bangalore, the High Court of Andhra Pradesh at Amravati, the High Court of Chennai, the High Court of Orissa at Cuttack, as well as the High Court of Kolkata, as it's called today, are vested with the admiralty jurisdiction. Previously, a vessel could be in any port in India and a litigant could go to any of the three and then five high courts, which is Bombay, Madras, Calcutta, Ahmedabad, and Hyderabad, could go to any of these courts to assert their maritime claim. But with the advent of the 2017 legislation, it is each state which exercises maritime jurisdiction or admiralty jurisdiction over the ports in its state. So if you have a vessel which is likely to call at any port in Gujarat, you have to file your case in the High Court of Ahmedabad. Today, therefore, with the advent of the 2017 legislation, admiralty law has expanded to all states, and there is a need in every state for development of an admiralty bar and for development of the admiralty jurisdiction in that state. So if you are in any state, in any of the coastal states in India, and you have any interest in law, here is one more option that you have. What can be done in admiralty law? The law sets out what is a maritime claim and what are the circumstances under which a vessel can be arrested. It also says which vessel can be arrested. It says how you can arrest it. The law is comprehensive in that sense. So what happens? A vessel is expected to come to India. You would know through the broking channel or through the ports channel as to which port the vessel is likely to come to. There is a litigant who comes to you and says that, okay, I have a claim. My claim is a maritime claim under the Admiralty Act. Please go arrest the vessel. A vessel, typically, most vessels stay in the port is usually 24 to 48 hours. If they are bulk carriers and you're lucky, it can go on to about 3 days, 4 days maximum, and no more than that. There are some vessels which take longer, but typically I'm talking about an average day in my life. I get a call today, vessel is coming tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock. I cannot file the suit at any time prior to 11. The vessel has to be in Indian waters, in an Indian port for me to file the claim. I file the claim and then I have to use every, cancel that. Once the vessel is in the port, I am then allowed to file my suit. I can register my suit and move the court at the earliest where I can get the court to examine my claim to see whether it's a viable maritime claim and can the vessel be arrested for it. Every arrest is followed by a process where a warrant of arrest is served upon a vessel. It's served on the port such that the vessel is not allowed to sail out of the port. The statute also lays down what are the options available to the owner. Can the owner come forward, put up security, etc.? There are various options that are available. All of that is found in the statute. This is something that you would learn once you become a lawyer, once you decide to practice on the admiralty side. These are things that are there. Do I enjoy my work? I enjoy my work thoroughly. I am extremely happy to be in this field. The kind of work that I do every day is a new learning. I don't stop learning any day. Every day a new file comes to my table. There is always a new nuance that I'm learning. I get to expand my reach of law, my understanding of law, my ability to apply the law across different situations, because it is very rare that you will find two cases with identical facts. More often than not, the nuances in each of it, simply because of the human element involved in the handling of each case, gives you that additional aspect to play with, gives you that additional area that you need to focus on, and gives you an idea as to how you can do this case better. So if you want to do maritime law, what do you have to do? First things first, you have to study law. You will have to enroll in a college which offers a law program, and there are various colleges in India which offer you a law program today. You can do your law after your 12th standard, which is one option, and then you do a 5-year course in law. The other option is you complete your graduation in whichever of your chosen field and then go for a 3-year program in law, both of which gives you an LLB degree, basis which you can then apply to the Bar Council of India or the Bar Council of the state in which you are intending to practice to give you what is called as a sanat or a license to practice. At the end of this, I will put up on screen a short note on what are the various courses or which are the various institutions offering maritime law as an option in India, uh, which is not very many, to be honest. It's just you've got the Gujarat Maritime University, which is the GNLU, which offers you certain programs in maritime law. It also gives you an LLM in maritime law. You've got the Nalsar in Hyderabad, which gives you an option. Uh, you have the MNLU, which is the Maharashtra National Law University, which gives you an option. You have the university in Kochi, which gives you an option again as an LLM program. In addition to all of this, most people or most students in India also prefer to look for options abroad where you have good programs in maritime law. And I will put up a very short note on what are the different options that are available to you. If you do not want to study or undergo the rigorous training required to study to be a lawyer, which is either 5 years or 3 years, as the case is, there are various certificate courses that are available, which gives you a brief aspect or an idea of what could be a legal understanding of the subject that you are wanting to pursue in the maritime industry. I would say that it's a good thing to study. It gives you a bird's eye view on what is the law on the subject. And therefore, if you want to pursue this career, which is not in law but in trade, it's equally important for you to know the nuances of law and how you are able to help out over there. So these career options are also available. I'll give you a link to that, and you can look at that. These are the various options that are available to you. I came into maritime law quite by accident. I joined the chambers of Mr. Venkiteswaran, late Mr. Venkiteswaran, who was my senior, who was India's foremost renowned maritime lawyer. And it was surely by my being here when I was a first year law student and running to court every day at 2:45 to either arrest a ship or release a ship, and the fun involved in these court procedures and court craft, that drew me to litigation and to maritime law. Over the years, I have learned that there are just so many aspects to maritime law, and it doesn't stop with what I have learned thus far. It goes further. Every day, every time I sit down with a new file, I'm learning something new. You learn something new when you're looking at new laws that are being made, and you realize the importance that goes, or the value that you're able to add to all of these things. And therefore, to me, this career option is a great career option. If you are interested in maritime law or in law as an option, research upon it, think about it, read about it. You need any help, you want any understanding, please feel free to reach out to me as well. I'll see how I can best help you understand from your perspective whether this is a great career option. And if you think it's a great career option, go for it. It is an extremely rewarding option. Thank you.